Welcome to Scoreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey, and this is our World Championships 2024 preview, part 2, focusing this time on men's and ice dance competitions, of which there's a lot to talk about and very deep fields here that I think are going to be a pretty compelling competition.
You're being so mild-mannered about it. I'm like, I am so stoked for these two competitions.
Well, okay, if I'm too mild-mannered, how about this?
Let's get ready to rumble!
That's a little better.
Too much?
Eh.
Just right? I do have housekeeping to hit, though, before we get started. In the last episode, we actually did have a mistake. We thought that 2 of the Chinese teams were in the Paris competition. There is only one team, Peng and Wang. The other team is the substitute team should something happen that they're not able to compete. We just missed that whenever we pulled the data for it, and so we thought there was one extra team.
Yes, very sorry. Don't like to be off on those things.
Yeah, so we're going to start with the men's division. So this is probably going to be the most fiercely competitive discipline at this Worlds.
Oh yeah, gonna be so good.
Yeah, well, we hope so, because we know the men can men.
I know. I just want to believe that it's going to be so good.
Yeah, I think that in this season, we've seen a little bit less of the menning.
Particularly in the second half of the season, for sure.
It got a little bit more consistent, but we also know that there's a lot of really great skaters who have had very inconsistent seasons. We have some who started off real hot and practically undefeated and then kind of struggle a little bit towards the end of it. We've got others who have been in really bad shape through a lot of the season and have come on a little stronger right when you'd want it to peak. But of course, if we're talking about the men's competition, then we're going to first be talking about what I'm now seeing referred to as the Thrivalry.
Yes, the Thrivalry. I believe that maybe even Olympics.com coined this because they're trying to create some enthusiasm about it.
Stop trying to make Thrivalry happen.
If it helps, I'm here for it.
I think it's funny.
It's great.
But of course, we're talking about
Ilia Malinin, Shoma Uno, and Yuma Kagiyama, because going into this competition, while there are definitely others that can absolutely get in on this game, those 3 are the ones that I believe most people are the most excited for and who expect the tightest competition between for the gold medal. I will start by saying, I think, at least based on a lot of the stuff that I'm reading online and based on a video that I believe Olympics.com even shared about the Thrivalry, everybody seems to just sort of expect Ilia Malinin to win, including Shoma Uno and maybe even Yuma Kagiyama, which was both a little bit surprising, and I'm hoping they're just using it as motivation.
Yeah, these 3 guys have really pushed each other over the last couple of years. Obviously, like Shoma and Yuma are from Japan, and Shoma is Yuma's idol, essentially, who he is
Also,
now his peer with.
Worth noting again and again, Shoma Uno, reigning world champion 2 times over. Continue.
Right. Shoma going into this is the most decorated skater of the bunch. He is, generally speaking, the most complete skater in the competition. This is a guy with extraordinary artistry, incredible jumps, but he does have some vulnerabilities when it comes to certain levels of consistency with those jumps now and then.
And he also has a kind of fudgy quad flip that his technique is not perfect on. But at the same time, if you're just looking at the most well-rounded, I don't know, I have to really hold myself in because Shoma is my favorite. I'm just unabashedly like, Shoma wins everything to me because Shoma is my heart in skating. But realistic version of me is like, going into this competition, even as the reigning world champion, to me, of the 3 we're talking about, he's the one I have the least expectations on, which really hurts.
And the conversation that we've been having about Shoma this whole season is whether or not his heart is really in competition anymore. He has entered this season with programs that seem to express a sense of gratitude towards the sport, towards the audiences, just towards the ice in general. But he has been showing that his interest really lies in the artistry. It lies in the expression on the ice, the beauty that he creates out there, and that he has kind of wanted to lean back from the technical, I mean, when I say technical, the jumping aspects of the sport. Now, we saw towards the end of the Grand Prix and then going into Japanese nationals that Stefan Lambiel was pushing him to reassert that technical jump training because he needed it to not just be able to compete against the likes of an Ilia Malinin, but also against the entirety of the men's field in Japan because they are so strong, particularly with the return of Yuma Kagiyama this season. Like you said there, as far as the guy with the lowest amount of expectation here, I kind of feel the same way because if Shoma comes into this with this sort of, I'm going to call it self-defeating, but kind of already accepting I'm not the top of the podium and I don't really care where I fall in general. I just want to do what I do well. I think he could kind of remove himself from the running, not intentionally, but just by not wanting enough.
Yeah. I mean, even in a few interviews, like I still get that fierce competitor in him. So I don't think it's quite to that degree, but I do feel like he has said enough where I really don't think he expects to be at the top of that podium by any stretch. I think he is just, I'm going there to do what I do best. And if I win a medal, cool, but we'll see how it goes. But we're dancing around the elephant in the room, but it is Ilia Malinin and what he's going to bring here. And Shoma and Yuma are well aware and have been watching him all season, knowing that if we're talking about the Grand Prix final especially, he threw down a competition there that if he matches that here, he's not beatable. That's possible. I don't know if it's likely. And I know there's definitely a lot of people that watched him at U.S. Nationals where he didn't have his best competition and have wondered, like, okay, is that going to impact him? Is that something we should be concerned about going in? But I'll admit, even though I obviously love Shoma and Yuma has come on so strong, it's really hard to ignore the building momentum towards Ilia Malinin world champion.
We look at the last couple of seasons. Ilia struggled at nationals in both seasons. He won both of them.
But they weren't his best competitions.
They weren't his best competitions. And I think that to a certain extent, I kind of wonder if he went into them overconfident because he was so much stronger than most of the rest of the field. I don't think that he necessarily trained correctly or came in with the right mindset. But I think he enters the international competitions, particularly when he's against these two guys and Adam Shalinfa. I think he comes in with a different mindset. I also think you can't count out the fact that even when Ilia has a rougher skate, that he has things in his pocket. He has Hail Marys that he can throw, extraordinary combinations that he can pull out sometimes when he knows that he might be down by points. You know, we've looked at it when he's done it at nationals where he'll pull out a wild triple combination that's just enormous points and is extremely difficult for most skaters to match. We've also, like in the last episode at the end of it, we talked about how we've seen him do clean quad toe, quad axle combinations in practice. Now, practice is very different from competitive ice, but we can see this is something he can do. I don't expect him to throw that here because the risk factor is so high. But if he felt like he was down and he needed to pick it up in the free skate, don't ever put anything like that past him.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, if he has a bad short program, I would put nothing past him in the free skate to win. He seems to be very calculating in the sense that one of the reasons that a lot of people don't throw random jumps here and there and they keep to their program is also because of the repetition errors that you can get and deductions that you can get because you're doing too many of the same jump, or you do something that was supposed to be in combination, then it wasn't because you fell or something, just mixing it up. Ilia seems pretty good at making sure, like, okay, I'm going to throw something because I know I can, and this is actually going to work. It tells me that in his training, he's got a lot of different scenarios that he's playing out just in case. It all feels very intentional, even whenever it's off the books, if you will. So I do kind of think that, I mean, especially considering both of his parents that coach him are former competitors, I think it's very strategic.
I think that sometimes because of his general manner and a certain level of bravado that Ilia carries himself with, I think some people sort of assume that there isn't, like you said, a calculating or particularly, I don't want to say intellectual, like that's not the right word for it, but that he's not a thinking man on the ice, because he does seem to be driven by adrenaline and crowd energy and just his sheer confidence. If there is something where I see a parallel between him and Nathan Chen, it is that ability to make changes on the fly. And not every skater can do that.
Exactly.
And Ilia has shown time and time again that if he knows that the chips are down, that he can make alterations and, like you said, avoid getting repetitive sequences and stuff.
Right. And I don't know that he hasn't also gotten those deductions before. I don't remember every competition ever in terms of if he's done that or not. But just having recently gone back and watched some of them, I'm like, oh, he really is pretty good on the fly. Very similar. Like Nathan was exactly who I was thinking of, who was always very good at that. But if there is someone that I think has the absolute best chance at beating Ilia here, it is definitely Yuma Kagiyama.
Yuma has come back so strong this season after being out with injury last season, and we've seen him do what I think is the smartest way for a competitor to re-enter competition, which is gradually increasing his difficulty, coming in, getting his feet underneath him, letting his body get used to the jumps again, and just introducing more of the quads back in to get to that competitive level. But what we've also seen from him this season is a substantial increase in quality of the artistic component. His beauty on the ice has grown immeasurably. The impact of working with Carolina Costner as one of his coaches is visible. I mean, if you want to talk about one of those cases where you can see a coach come in and it change a skater, Yuma Kagiyama is a textbook definition of it. And what we've been seeing of him is just been beautiful, beautiful skating.
As you're talking, literally, I'm like replaying his 4 continents long program in my mind, because I can't express how much I loved watching him at 4 continents specifically, because you could see that relief coming over him in the sense that he has been working so slowly and measured with his comeback. He hasn't been like, here's all my jumps, here's everything I can do. It's all been very step by step. And it almost has felt like it was torturing him. Like you could feel like his frustration and his early in the season, that there was this part of him like, I'm happy, I'm content, but I'm not excited. And if you've watched Yuma over the years, one of my favorite things about Yuma is his brilliant, kind of sparkly personality. He always has this very earnest, almost sweetness to his enthusiasm whenever he does well. You were seeing little bits of that through the season, but at 4 continents, I felt like he was legitimately satisfied finally, where it's like, not that he felt like he was at his very best, but he looked proud of himself. He looked excited. He looked prepared. And there was something about seeing him that way, especially in the kiss and cry at that competition, where I had that feeling like, oh, Yuma is really back now, for really real. And with that, going into Worlds, with that momentum, I really do think that if Ilia needs to look over his shoulder at someone, it is absolutely at Yuma Kagiyama, because Yuma is a more complete skater than him, for sure. His grade of execution on his jumps, whenever he does them well, as good as Ilia's is, Yuma's is going to be higher. Because, I mean, if you've seen Yuma Kagiyama's quad sal, you know of what I speak. It is perfection. It is just a gorgeous, gorgeous jump when he does it right. I think it's actually going to be pretty close between them personally.
Of course, it's been a little while since we've seen all these guys on the ice. And while we haven't seen Ilia in competition since U.S. Nationals, which was quite a while ago at this point,
Yeah.
we did just see him. Well, we watched a video of him from On Ice Perspectives that was from that big event that they hold over in Italy, the name of which escapes me at the moment, but it's a gorgeous event and we've seen a lot of really great videos from it. But if you just watch that, again, you're going to see, one, Ilia Malinin loves a crowd and he loves to play to a crowd. And you can never discount that impact on the ice in front of an enthusiastic audience, because when a skater rises to the energy of the crowd and the crowd rises to meet them, you can create really special moments, and you see that impact in a PCS score. I don't know how you don't. Watching him there in front of the Italian crowd, this is a guy who has really learned to amplify the impact of his skating for an audience and only gets better at it. So Yuma can definitely bring a crowd to its emotional peak. He doesn't sell quite that same way, but he is a much more refined skater when it comes to just the beauty of his skating skills. But like Yuma said in one of the Olympic interviews that they had in that Thrivalry video, he was like, I hear that Ilia is working on his artistry. Oh no, essentially. Because he knows that's the area of weakness for Ilia that they're all trying to exploit. But if Ilia continues to get better there, that's going to be a struggle for all of them.
I want to move past the Thrivalry into the one other person that I think needs to be in this conversation. I mean, really, there's two, but one, Adam Siohimfa from France, had a brilliant, undefeated first half of the season, had a rough Grand Prix final, and since then hasn't quite looked as strong. However, with what you're talking about, I don't know that there is a skater in the men's field right now that can bring a crowd to its feet in the same way, to get that same energy from a crowd than Adam Siohimfa. He does incredible things on the ice. He's a brilliant skater. He has not been as consistent the second half of the season. I'm a little less sure of his medal prospects, but at the same time, he is absolutely in this discussion, and I expect him to be top 6 for sure.
With Adam, my worry is that he peaked too soon in the season because he was so strong. It's important to note that he beat Ilia on the Grand Prix.
Yes, he did.
And he went into the end of the Grand Prix season as one of the favorites for the Grand Prix final, and then just didn't have very good skates there. He won the French championships, but with fairly sloppy skates, but he also had no time to get ready for it. I think it was like days after the Grand Prix final.
Right. And then at Europeans, it was practically a cakewalk for him to come in and win. He was able to do a backflip in the long program, take that deduction, and still win. There's some cockiness there. There just is. And I really, really like Adam and I appreciate him. But coming into Worlds, it's going to be interesting because I think he has so much to offer this sport and I love him. But I agree. Did you peak too soon? Because since Grand Prix final, we just haven't seen a clean skate.
My hope is that he's had some time to train, to rest, to go back to the drawing board, to tighten some things up, and just to recognize the strength of the field that he's going against and what he needs to be competitive there. He is absolutely a threat for the podium. You're saying you're hoping for a top 6 for him, and I would absolutely expect him to be there as long as he doesn't just have a complete meltdown. But he is one of the class of the field competitors and has a couple of my favorite programs from the entire season. I love this guy's skating.
Oh, yeah.
The
totally.
Storytelling that he does is exceptional amongst all of the men. And there is not a single better Arabian in this sport
than
the one that he throws in his free skate. I expect great things from Adam, and I'm always excited to see him take the ice. I just don't know where he's at in this year's journey.
And that brings me to the other person who I feel needs to be in this medal conversation, especially, and that is Junwon Cha. Junwon Cha, our reigning silver medalist from the World Championships last year. If you just are looking at him at 4 continents, hell yeah, Junwon Cha is coming in here ready to go and looking like someone who might even still have a chance at the podium, regardless of his injuries earlier in the season and his lackluster performances earlier in the season. However, he still didn't have the same technical firepower that he is capable of and that he has shown before. So it'll be very interesting to see if between 4 continents and now he's been able to add in more of his quads and be ready to compete. Because if you're looking again at more of the artistic complete skater, I mean, Junwon, we love Junwon. He is the drama. He's brilliant. And if he can skate clean, everybody's going to be taking such big risks here. There's going to be messy skates because this is the biggest competition of the year. They're going to throw everything they have. I just want clean skates from him, but I really, really hope that he is in that medal mix, even from short into long, so that he's in that final flight of men and can really show up and remind everybody why he's one of the best in the world.
Junwon is a spectacular skater, but the difficult season that he's had and how crap a lot of those skates were early on.
They were really bad. I felt so bad for him.
Yeah, I mean, just you'd see struggling with conditioning, struggling with injuries, struggling with a change in training early in the season, just had him blowing axles all over the place and just delivering skates that were nowhere near what you would find acceptable for a skater of his level, because he is just one of the best in the world. We've seen him a return to form from him in the last couple of competitions. But the real question is, will he have his entire arsenal back? Because he will need it against this field. I love Junwon's skating, and he might even overtake Shoma for the one that just has the most artistic flair, the most beauty on the ice. But he is going to have that technical component at full power, or he's just not going to compete with those top guys. And you also can't count out the other Japanese skater in this competition, Kalmura.
I mean, Cal is spectacular. His last competition, which was after Japanese Nationals, was rough. It was messy. He won, but he didn't look good. And there was nobody competing against him that was anywhere near in his league. So it was an easy win. But I believe his score was maybe something like 182, somewhere around there.
Super beatable.
Yeah, I think it might have even been lower than that now that I'm thinking about it. But regardless, it was not the Kalmura that we're used to seeing. I still don't think he's in the medal mix here unless we see a lot of disasters. However, this is his coming out party in the senior worlds. So you can't tell me that he's not also shooting for that top 6. That is my expectation, is that's his goal, is to be in the top flight of men.
Yeah, I mean, you look at end of last season, Cal won 4 continents and then became the junior world champion. This season, I think that he has, up until that last performance we saw from him, really started to rein in some of the reckless wildness of his skating and to get control over. Even he has this powerful style. I mean, Cal's skating style is very unique to him. It's one of the things I really like about what he does. Nobody else skates like him, but it can get away from him sometimes. And we've seen that at various competitions where the refinement slips away and instead you get something that's a little sloppier, a little wilder, the edges get a little scratchy, and sometimes he takes some falls. So it's really going to depend on which version of Kalmura shows up here, because when we talk about how the people who are kind of waiting in the wings, where if a big leaguer doesn't perform to their best or just has a really bad day, Kalmura is one of those people who could swoop in and grab a podium spot if the other guys didn't live up to it. And particularly because I think his technical this season has been higher and more consistent than, say, a Junwon Cha. I think that if you were going just based on that as a trend, I think he could beat Junwon, but he is not the complete skater that Junwon Cha is.
No, but he's not alone in that category of the skaters who are sort of waiting just in case somebody at the top falters, because I feel like that same thing could be said for Lucas Britschke, who also his last competition wasn't great, but he has been very consistent through this season and has been very competitive. I think he's won 2 Grand Prix medals this season, if I'm not mistaken, won several medals in the Challenger Series. So I don't think he is amongst the very tip top of the men, but at the same time, I think he's right there, right beneath them, ready to attack if they don't perform up to the level that they're capable of. But also you have the wild card that is Jason Brown. And I don't know what to expect from our Lord and Savior, Jason Brown, who we all adore very, very much. And he is easily the best skater here if you're looking at skating skills. That is who he is. That is his identifying marker, but has no quadruple jumps. And yet was still in the top 6 last year. Can he do that again? I don't expect that.
I would not think so. No, not against this field.
Right, because I feel like the field has deepened since last season, for sure. I don't know what to expect, to be honest. If he is flawless, who knows? It's really just going to depend on what other people do, but I still think he'll be top 10. I'd be very surprised if he's not.
Yeah, in the skates that we've seen from Jason this season, he didn't look as comfortable in his programs, and he had to make some changes because of that, because I think his free skate was even too complicated for him, which is saying something.
It really is.
That's pushing the limits of what a person can do when you've gone beyond what Jason Brown can compete with. But he is also doing the Jason Brown thing at this point, which is basically splitting time between a competitive skater and a show skater. He's not competing at all these little competitions and stuff all over the place. I think we've only seen him, twice this season?
Yeah.
So, we don't really have a lot of track record this season to go on. We can only look at the quality that we know Jason Brown is there for. In this particular instance, Jason and Camden are there to basically try to make sure they can conserve 3 spots for the Americans if anything goes wrong with Ilia's.
If Ilia doesn't win.
Right.
Yeah. Regardless, we need to have 2 people equal 13. If Ilia comes in second, then either Jason Brown or Camden Pulkkinen needs to come in 11th. Their placements need to add up to 13 to allow for 3 men to go. It's why Jason Brown is still the one that the U.S. wants to send to all of these, because he's the most reliable. They know he's not going to get a podium spot. It would take legitimately, I think, a miracle. And by a miracle, I mean everybody crapping the bed like for him to have a shot at a medal because of the lack of the technical. But he also has some of the top scores of the past few years if you look at him compared to a lot of these other men. So we'll see. I'm giving a shrug of, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I love him, and I love that I get to see him here.
After that, though, the rest of the field is certainly an order of magnitude lower in potential, but there are a lot of great skaters in there and a few that could be surprising. A couple of them at the top of my list and thinking about that are Alexander Slevko from Estonia and Mikhail Shadorov from Kazakhstan. Slevko had a breakout performance at the European Championships, the type of performance that wins you fans, that makes you much more visible on the international stage, and ideally sets you up for greater success in your career going forward, because it really was kind of a game changer kind of moment. The thing for him, though, is that his score ceiling is not as high as a lot of the other guys that are more podium potentialed here. He just doesn't have as many of the difficult jumps as they do. If he's put some work in the downtime to improve that, there's always a potential that he could kind of jump up there. He really does have a lot of strong quality to his skating. I think a top 10 here would be a terrific finish for him in general, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited to see him. I like this guy a lot. I'm just looking forward to see what he brings and see if he can recreate that European magic. And then we look at Mikhail Shadorov from Kazakhstan. This is kind of the dark horse guy to me through this whole season. He came into this competitive season as somebody that I don't think anybody was talking about or expecting much from. He shows up on the Grand Prix, has some really great performances that get a little underscored and don't get him as high up in the rankings as they should, but made a lot of people stop and go, wait a minute, this guy over here in his Matrix outfit is starting to kick some butt, and he's got some really nice jumps. Then through the rest of the season, it's like everybody had to sit up and realize, like, no, this guy's a competitor. There's still a lot of development to get him to that upper echelon level, but his technical ability is extremely strong. As he works to improve his overall completeness as a skater, I think this guy could be a real threat. Is he a top 5 guy here? No, I don't think so. Probably not, but top 10, I think he's a real solid choice for that.
I agree with you on both of those counts. I'm excited to see what both Alexander and Mikhail bring to the Worlds, but the other person I am most excited to see here is Boyang Jin.
Oh yeah, Boyang.
Because he has had a great season overall, and he only seems to be getting better as he goes. Like the last time we saw him, he looked magnificent, and I am so here for the renaissance of Boyang Jin. He's just a delight on ice, and I think he could be top 10 here. He could even be top 6 here. I wouldn't put it past him. Boyang is great. He is one of the founding fathers of the quad revolution, if you will. Yeah, I'm here for it. So let's see some good Boyang Jin content coming out of this World Championships.
China's Boyang Jin, along with the US's Jason Brown, are like
the elder statesmen.
They are the elder statesmen, exactly. They are the veterans of the field. And while that comes with being surpassed by some of the younger skaters who do have these bigger point thresholds, what we've seen from Boyang, just like you said, is this resurgence. I mean, we saw him last year starting to kind of push his way back into that consciousness in that way. He's always a fan favorite because this is just an extraordinarily likable guy with great skating abilities. But the last few competitions, he has shown up in a way that I was not prepared for, and he has explosively won over crowds. Yeah, I don't think you can count him out. I mean, podium, yeah, no. But in the top 6, that is an absolute possibility for him because Boyang is a fierce and wonderful competitor, and I would love that for him.
I know, me too. Other people just to keep an eye on here. I'm going to be very curiously watching the two Canadian men, Wesley Chu and Roman Sadovsky, or Romsky, as he likes to refer to himself on YouTube's. Wesley has looked better and better this year, if you will, in this.
Far better than I would have ever expected.
Yes. The past two competitions, he's looked a lot better and a lot stronger. So I'm excited to see where he's at. Roman Sadovsky, I never know what to expect. I love his skating, but he's one of the most inconsistent skaters out there. We'll see. I'm crossing my fingers that he's had some time and some coffee and maybe some better travel luck and that it's all going to go well for him.
I think that both the Canadian guys here, their mission is just secure spots for next year.
Absolutely.
Neither of them have a shot at the podium.
And enjoy a hometown crowd. And a few others to just keep an eye on. We have Nika Gatse from Georgia. He's got big jumps. He's not the most interesting skater, but he does have really good technical content, so he may be in the mix.
And he likes to throw big drama in there, ripping his shirt open.
That's right. He's going to do the thing where he rips his shirt open. Okay.
It's kind of hilarious.
It is.
Yeah. But his jumps are impressive.
They are impressive.
He's not a particularly complete skater,
No.
And the drama doesn't actually really sit well on him, but the man has hops.
You have Italy's Gabriele Frangipani and Nicola Memmola. We're not seeing our beloved Matteo Rizzo here because he is still recovering from surgery after his brilliant Europeans bronze medal. Good luck to him, and we'll miss him here.
I'm really bummed to not see his Fix You program at this Worlds. It's so good. It is a total goosebump program.
Love him. And also, I've heard Denise Vasilyevs has given us a new long program to some Lion King music, which I love me some Denise Vasilyevs, but I don't know. If it's him and Stefan Lambiel doing Lion King, it's going to be good. I'm just going to say it's going to be good because I'm going to believe it's going to be good.
It's wild to throw a completely new program at Worlds.
Yes, it is.
Never know what to think about that, but if strategically that's what he and Stefan Lambiel, in Stefan we trust. So
just go with the chaos.
All I can hope is that it means that they've reworked a program that emphasizes all the things that Denise does well, which is extraordinary artistry and expression, and makes it easier for him to stay on his feet.
And I think that one piece of the music he has used before in an exhibition, so they built a program around that.
Well, his exhibitions are brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, lean into that.
Now the question. Podium.
This feels like one of those super obvious ones, but to me it's Ilia, Yuma, Shoma. That's what I think the podium will look like.
I'm going to be bold here, and I'm going to hate myself for it. I'm going to say Ilia, Yuma, Adam.
Ooh, yeah.
And when I say that, understand that that is a knife to my stomach.
You should see her face. It is
painful. I love you, Shoma, but I don't know. I'm just going with it.
But always worth noting, Shoma can surprise you and anything happens. So,
and you will come back to our World Championships wrap up, and Shoma Uno has won the gold medal, and I am the happiest version of me you've heard.
I expect we're going to be watching these competitions in real time because they're in the same hemisphere with us. And wow, we are going to be so tense watching these.
The men's especially is going to be really hard.
Yeah. Again, this is a deep field, a lot of great talent here. I expect some really strong skating. I expect to also see some Zamboniing as people go out and throw as hard a program as they can in hopes of just gaining those upper spots in the ranking. If you want to land top 3, top 6, top 10 at Worlds. And so you're going to see some guys really give it their all here. I don't think we're going to see safe skates. I think this is going to be people all just giving it the very top level of what they can.
Completely agree. All right. Well, then let's move on to the dance competition to wrap up all of our previews. And I feel like we have left the one where I feel like the podium is the biggest mystery to me. Maybe pairs would be bigger, but I don't know. I go into this year's dance competition with a big question mark of, I know the 3 teams that are likely going to be on that podium, but in what order? I don't really know.
Well, and I'd almost go four teams.
That's fair.
Because here's the thing in the toss-up. To me, the absolute class of the field, and this will come to no surprise to anybody who listens to the show regularly because you will know that I'm the world's biggest Chalk and Bates fan. So I'm going to say the Chalk and Bates are the class of the field because that's the way I actually feel and think that from both artistic and technical levels, I don't think anybody out there touches what they do. However, what we have seen through this season is that depending on the competition, depending on the judges, depending on how people rise to the moment, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier from Canada, Charlene Guinard and Marco Fabri from Italy, and to a certain extent, Lila Fear and Lewis Gibson from Great Britain. Any of these teams are podium threats and could take it. Now, Ice Dance usually feels a little bit more regimented, and you don't usually see big upsets, but we've seen some upsets this season that defy the usual order of things in Ice Dance. So I have no idea what's going to happen here. I couldn't say what I would want to happen, but I just don't know. Plus, and I guess we can just start right off with Madison Chalk and Evan Bates because they are the most accomplished team on the ice here. They're the veteran team.
And our reigning world champions.
Reigning world champions, the most decorated team in the field. They are fantastic. And they have been prepping new elements for Worlds, new lifts that they're going to be putting into these programs that nobody has seen yet. If we know something about Madison Chalk and Evan Bates, is that they don't rest on their laurels. They improve, they find the holes in things, they plug those holes, they change things. We saw it last year where they started off with programs that were lukewarm and ended with magic. This season, they started off with incredible programs from go, and they keep making them better. We saw them at U.S. Nationals about to throw up on the ice because they were so sick with the flu and still did things that most teams cannot do. So the lifts that I've seen them practicing that they say they're going to put into these programs are insane. And they were already doing completely nuts stuff.
Yeah.
Now, that could turn around and screw them up because they could be throwing things they have not refined through the course of the season and had something that doesn't work. Or they could be just absolutely phenomenal. We don't know because we haven't seen them, but my bet is on phenomenal.
I agree with you. I am betting on phenomenal performances throughout from the two of them, especially having had the nationals that they did where they were so sick. They still won and they still looked great, especially in their short program. The long one was certainly rough, but their programs are brilliant. They have incredible material this year. I just feel like they have that hunger to hit both perfectly because they did have the error last year when winning their world title that I am sure Madison would love to erase from her memory. That said, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier have been right there behind them for a really long time. This is a Montreal World Championships, and I am curious, do the judges give the edge to the world champions who train and live in Montreal? And you have the entire camp. The most influential school in ice dance is in Montreal. Do you put their team at the top of the podium? Or do you give Canada their home country advantage and put the Canadians for the gold? I am very curious because Piper and Paul also, throughout the season, have been strengthening both their programs. I think they know that their rhythm dance isn't their best and it's not selling as well. They made some adjustments whenever we saw them last and it had improved. I know we've talked about this a lot this season. They're still not my favorite programs. I have warmed a lot to their Wuthering Heights free dance. They're exceptional skaters. They're brilliant. They're going to be right there. So I really see the competition between those two being extremely tight. But you cannot count out Marco and Charlene from Italy. Because if you're talking about the most consistent dance team this year, to me, it's Marco and Charlene.
Yeah, Guinard and Fabry have delivered every single time they've been on the ice. They have terrific programs, finely tuned performances where they skate with just such exceptional connection to each other and paint a beautiful picture on the ice. Their technical skills are peak. They're so good.
Marco's lifts, he is a smallish guy who is so strong. He bewilders me. I typically find myself when watching them, I'm mostly watching Marco.
Yeah, there's something very exceptional about his partner abilities, but they are a lovely team, and I've loved everything that I've seen from them this season.
I still can't handle their rhythm dance music. I cannot and never will.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you can't get on
but
board with
I love
those.
their free dance. It's great.
Yes. The tricky thing with them is that we did see them get beat on the Grand Prix by Lila Fear and Lewis Gibson. And Fear and Gibson are a terrific team, and I really enjoy their skating. But it was a controversial podium.
Just a little.
it shook up the ice dance fandom in a big way because Fear and Gibson are kitschy. They're campy, not in the way that Piper and Paul are sometimes, but there's like
different camp.
Yeah, a different type of expression. They tend to have some of the best lifts in the game.
Their rotating lifts that Lewis does, phenomenal.
We've seen this whole season, I think, a real level up from Lila Fear, who in the past has always felt like the weaker element of that team, just because Lewis Gibson is just extraordinary. And now they feel like they're synced up. It feels like they're on the same level with each other and they're delivering really great programs. That Rocky program has been silly at points in the season, but it has also been explosive at other times. And when we saw them in the Grand Prix
at NHK,
it was mind-blowing and the audience lost its mind for it. Now, we have seen them at Europeans get upstaged by the silver medalists there.
Oh, for sure. Whenever you're talking about, I don't know, the biggest moment of ice dance this season, it's Allison Reed and Salius Amber-Levicius from the European Championships. I don't expect them to be in this mix for the medals, but I do expect them to be directly standing behind that group.
If we want to talk about my favorite skate of the season, it's probably Allison and Salius's European free skate because it was phenomenal. It was on home ice. It was in front of a hometown crowd, and they were exceptional. I mean, it was a perfect skate. I can't find a flaw in that performance. It was incredible. And they were still beat by Fear and Gibson there because they took silver and the Italians took the top spot. But I don't think there's any question that Reed and Amber-Levicius won the night. I mean, that's an objective fact in the hearts of everybody who watched it. And I think that the success they had there kind of took the wind a little bit out of the performance from Fear and Gibson.
That's fair. It really did. Europeans, to be honest, it's a struggle to remember Lila and Lewis's skates from there because Marco and Charlene won and were brilliant.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Like flawless. And then Allison and Salius were just absolutely bonkers good. And I'm sure with, Lila and Lewis, they were also great, but I can't remember them there, which is not a great sign. Also could just mean I was tired, but I don't think so. I was really into that competition.
Their free skate at Europeans was definitely lower tier than what they had performed, particularly when, if NHK is the high point for them. And Grand Prix Final had some problems for them. So I don't think you can count out Fear and Gibson, but we also haven't seen them for a while. So,
True.
Yeah, I'm not sure what state they're going to be coming in. But that competitive group, it could go a lot of different ways depending on how people perform and what the judges want to see at this competition.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious. And again, it's not nothing whenever you think about the fact that both Reed and Amber-Levicius and Lewis and Lila both train in Montreal. For all the fact that, the Canadians you'd think of as home field advantage, that is Lila and Lewis's hometown at this point. It is Allison and Salius's hometown. So they are in their home. Part of me feels like there's more added pressure there, but also there has to be something just wonderful about like, if the chaos is too much the day in between your competitions, you can go skate on your own home ice. You can go to your apartment. You don't have to be in a hotel. Like, even if you maybe are staying in a hotel, you don't have to be. You can go see your dog. Like, you can actually have a bit of your own life while you're there. So I think that any team that has that here is at an advantage.
Certainly.
I really do.
Yeah. And of course, there are a number of other teams that train there that are in this competition as well. The rest of the field, things get a little bit more shaken up. For everybody else, this is the stair-stepping towards the Olympics, really.
Exactly.
Like for the next couple of years to start establishing themselves as really terrific teams. There's so many in here, but if there's one that immediately I look at and think, okay, this is a team that's going to get real impressive over the next couple of seasons if they continue to develop the way they do, it's Marjorie LaJoie and Zachary Legas from Canada.
My babies. I love them. LaJoie and Legas, I am so excited to see her because we didn't see them at Canadian Nationals because Marjorie had suffered a concussion in practice and had to be off the ice for a while. So I'm hoping they're back at full capacity and that she is fully healed. I cannot wait to see them here because their two programs are brilliant in totally different ways. I was not sold on their rhythm dance whenever they first brought Thriller out this season, and I am a convert. I believe, and I agree with you. Like, to me, this is absolutely a team of the future. This is a future team that's going to be considered great, not just good. I'm very, if you can't tell, stoked to see what they bring because I want to see where they place. I feel like there's a ton of teams here that are really close in terms of their overall score ceiling at this point this season. So where all of these are going to sort themselves out is really kind of up in the air because you could look at Lejoie and Laga and be like, guys, you almost beat Piper and Paul at a Grand Prix earlier this year. But then you look at a team like Turkila and Versluis from Finland, who may not have had as strong of a season this year, but are an incredible team that have been really close before in big competitions. So is this their time to step forward a little bit? It could be. And I do think that their free dance is maybe one of the top 2 best of the season.
Yes, Tequila and Versluis free dance is fabulous. It's one that every time they do it, it absolutely just captures my heart and imagination. It takes me places. Very similar to how Amber Livikus and Reed's free skate is. Tequila and Versluis really create a moment. They have unique choreography there. The Achilles heel for them is that their short program, the rhythm dance, is just not as strong.
It's not, unfortunately.
And that holds them back here because they have one brilliant program and then one that is a little bit diminished compared to it. But yes, they are a fabulous team. And I really hope that that gets reflected here because we've seen them get weird dings a couple of times this season. A few of the ice dance teams have. They've gotten weird deductions that nobody can figure out in the kiss and cry and then have to go and find out that they did illegally put their knee in the wrong place in the air or something and lost 2 points. Like just some really weird stuff that's been very questionable. Another team that I'm just hyped to see here in their first Worlds together is Olivia Smart and Tim Diak representing Spain, because this team is so fun and so charismatic on the ice. They're in their first season together. I mean, they're veteran skaters, but this is their first Worlds together. And I think that the expectation for them, or the plan for them, is just to really put on a good showing and make sure they're setting themselves up for the coming seasons.
Exactly. I'll be surprised considering the depth of this field if they actually make the top 10. If they did, that would be a pretty wonderful accomplishment for them. I don't expect that. But like you said, I think this is more of them saying, hi, we've been around this season. Let's make our formal hard launch, if you will, here at World Championships so that you know that we're a team to keep in mind as they continue to come together. So they've been improving almost every time we see them. I think they've had a couple of competitions here and there that haven't worked. But the last time we saw them, they look great. Can't wait to see how they progress as a team. Also in their first World Championships, without a medal hope in the world, but I can't wait to see them, is Hana Lim and Ye Kwan, because it's Han and Ye, and I love them so much. And I'm so excited that they're going to their first Worlds.
Yeah, so South Korea's Hana Lim and Ye Kwan, they appeared on the senior level last season with World Team Trophy. This is their first senior season. This is their first senior Worlds. And a top 10 finish would be kind of a miracle here.
A miracle is a good way to put it, yes.
Looking at the field. However, what we have seen is that as the season has gone on, they have progressed in their scores and in their placements. They've been upping their game steadily to the point where they've been a little surprising in a few places where I think they beat teams that you would not have expected them to have surpassed. This is a terrific team. Huge charisma. They bring so much to the ice. I love every second of their skates. I am an absolute Lim and Kwan fan. I don't know what will happen with them here. I would love a top 10 finish for them. I don't really have that expectation, but I think that they're just going to come out and make an audience happy because that's what they do, and then just see where the chips fall.
The reason I definitely don't see that is because I feel like, again, there are just so many teams kind of in this, not at the tip top, but not sliding down to the bottom. You have the Czech Republic's Taschlerova and Taschler, who have been better and better every time we see them this year.
Super cool lifts. She's so
charismatic.
Yeah.
You have France's Desmogé and Le Messier, who, my goodness, have they been like, hey, by the way, we're here and you're going to pay attention to us in every competition.
They've really been making a play this season and they've been impressive.
But also from France, you have La Pareva and Brissot, who I adore. They have my favorite other than maybe Maddie and Evan's rhythm dance this season to the 80s theme, because it's just quirky and different and idiosyncratic, and it's just so fun.
It is so great. And, not for nothing, that's a team that has had the most viral success as far as gaining attention from non-skating audiences. La Breva and Brassard are one of the most unique teams in the competition. What they bring to the ice is totally different from everybody else. It is not always everybody's cup of tea, as some of the commentators love to remind you. And yet, their stuff is what seems to gather more attention from an audience that is not as exposed to ice dance.
I love them.
You can't count them out. They've been on the podium or just off the podium in pretty much every competition they've been in this season. A top 6 finish is very possible for La Breva and Brassard.
But then you also have Christina Carrera and Anthony Ponomarenko from the U.S., who have been getting better and better throughout the season. And especially the growth in Anthony in terms of his interpretation of the music. Christina has always had that, in my opinion. But, now I feel like they're much more equal. Their programs, like at U.S. Nationals, were just sparkling. They didn't have their best days at 4 continents, but that was so close to U.S. Nationals. I feel like that's a pass. Like, it almost doesn't count because they had 3 days between competitions. It's like Adam Seohemfa between Grand Prix final and French Nationals. It's like, no. The fact that you stood up and showed up is pretty amazing.
Carrera and Ponomarenko, I feel, are kind of similar to Lajoie and Laga in the sense that they are the next in line in their countries, and they have only been getting better and more impressive. That free skate from Carrera and Ponomarenko this season is dynamite. It is so, so good. But I like that short program a lot, too. So where they fall is, gosh, this is going to be a hard one because a lot of these groups are really neck and neck, and they have definitely made wild improvements this season. And then there's just there's a handful of other people that are like Brody and Somerville from the US who are
they're making their debut.
Right. Yeah. This is just a great opportunity for them.
Yes.
Don't expect big scores or big placements from them, but just hope that they have great skates and they set themselves up well for the coming seasons and for growth within the US rankings. But the U.S. Ice Dance division is highly competitive. So for Brody and Somerville to be here is actually like a really nice vote of confidence for them.
You also have Czech Republic has the other sibling team of Mrazekova and Mrazek. They're not as strong as Tachlerov and Tachler, but at the same time, they're young. They are getting their feet under them at World Championships. I think that this is either their second or third as seniors. But in ice dance, that's practically brand new, and they are fast. They fly across the ice. So keeping an eye on them and seeing kind of where they end up here, it's going to be interesting over the next few years to kind of see how all of these puzzle pieces shift, because it isn't as clear cut as, the singles or pairs where it is who falls today or who messes up the least. In ice dance, it's inches, not miles. So it's definitely that feeling of this is going to be important leading into Milano Cortina.
Yeah. And then I think it's worth mentioning Japan's Masato Kamatsubara and Tim Coletto.
Just for fun.
I mean, they are a fun team, but the last time that we saw them, they had really made some strides. Their Ghostbusters program that was very kitsch at the beginning of the season.
It's so cheeky.
And it is so cheeky, but it was actually really good the last time we saw them. And then their free dance was elevated over what we'd seen earlier in the season. Again, not a team that I expect in that top 10, but I do like this team a lot, and I expect them to bring a real sense of fun to their programs here. I'm just looking forward to watching them.
And I mean, on a less fun note, there's also, going to be there Lawrence Fournier-Boudre and Nikolai Sorensen, who I feel kind of uncomfortable even kind of delving into what I expect, because there's still this ongoing investigation that they're going to be skating during. So I feel like it's worth noting that they are going to be here, and I expect them, honestly, to land in the top 10 as well. But beyond that, I just don't know what else I can say about it just yet.
I mean, Fournier-Boudre and Sorensen could be in the top 6, honestly.
Yeah, I mean if we're looking at historical competition records,
If you remove all of the allegations and everything that's hovering over them right now and just look at them from a purely technical performance level, they're a very strong team that has a very good chance of being amongst the top teams at this competition.
Yeah.
But it's a very difficult thing to be excited about or even objective about, just considering the emotional impact of that allegation and not knowing, of just going through this whole season without any real ruling or much in the way of commentary from the federations about it. So I think it's a very uncomfortable thing for a lot of skaters, but definitely a lot of fans. And it does leave us in a very compromised place to even talk about it. But that's really the last I have to say about it.
Better to just move on. So let's finish this preview episode off with our dun 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 ice dance predictions. I don't have the fancy sound effects that you do.
I'm the one with the buttons where I can hit the fancy sound effect. If I'm going with who I think it should be based on everything that this season has given us, I would put it at Chalk and Bates gold, Guinard and Fambry silver, and Gillis and Poirier in bronze. However, I would say that Gillis and Poirier have a very strong chance of ending up at the top of the podium based on some of the scores they got. Very generous scores, but scores they got early in the Grand Prix season while in Canada. And if I was saying who I wanted in there, it would not be Piper and Paul in bronze. It would be Amberlivicus and Reed.
Well, if we're going with our heart scores, those are going to be very different.
Very different. Yeah.
Okay, so my 3 on the podium is pretty much the same, except I'm just going to go ahead and go with what my brain is telling me. And I'm going to put Piper and Paul at the top, Maddie and Evan in second, and Charlene and Marco in third, knowing full well that could toss it up in the air and be any mixture of those 3 teams. Marco and Charlene could take this. You never know. But I'm going to stick with that for now. But if we're talking about who I would want on that podium, if I was giving it from my heart, I actually think I would really love a surprise from Tequila and Versluis, because I just love that free dance so much. And I just think it's so inventive. I don't think that they have the ability to make that jump, but at the same time, it really does speak to me in a big way. So
if they just had a stronger rhythm dance, I think they'd be better positioned for it, because that free dance is remarkable. But yeah, it would be a long shot to get there.
Yes.
So we obviously had a lot to cover with this because, it's Worlds and everybody's there.
And literally everybody.
Yeah.
Other than Matteo Rizzo.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing, too, just looking at some of the talent that isn't at this event, because there's only so many slots. And when you don't have people like Matteo Rizzo, or you don't have a lot of the Japanese men who are really strong, and you have a bunch of
Soda Yamamoto and Shun Sato. Still hurts.
Right. Yeah. You have a Kevin Amos who elected not to do this because the end of his season had been so poor, and he's taken some time to.
Bless you, Kevin Amos.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that whatever Kevin's doing right now, that he's living his best life and
don't watch
refinding himself.
This. Do not watch this. Go drink margaritas on a beach somewhere and don't listen.
Yeah.
Don't watch.
But yeah, I think both these 2 divisions that we just talked about and all of it together, there is a lot of action coming up ahead of us and could be a ton of surprises. I'm honestly kind of anxious about it. I think I've used that word a lot when I've talked about this world.
Yeah, just a bit.
Definitely very anxious going into it. And I'm going to be really interested to see how a lot of this shakes out.
Same. Well, and I was listening to the latest episode of the run through with Adam Rippon and Sarah Hughes and Ashley Wagner. And they put it into words well, from my perspective, by saying that this feels super important because it is leading into Milano Cortina. Like, this World Championships is the one that sets everybody kind of forward on their course for the next 2 years. The past 2 World Championships, you had the post-Olympics, which is always kind of its own very specific thing that happens. It's like the come down after the Olympics. And then you have the first year after the Olympics that feels like everybody's still just figuring out what their name is, where they're supposed to go, who's doing what. There is no game plan. This one really is where we start seeing separation, the gaps between who are the favorites leading into the Olympic Games, who are the people that are right there with them, and then kind of who's maybe not going to be joining that crowd just yet. And it really does start to develop in this season. So I expect whatever to happen here at Worlds to be extremely important going towards that Olympic Games. But also what we see this summer after the World Championships is going to be equally interesting, because I think whatever happens here will also determine, do we see new pair partnerships? Do we see new dance partnerships? Do we see the return of people like Gabby and Guillaume? what's going to happen to kind of upset the balance as we go forward. So yeah, this competition is quite important and I'm real excited. And also, if you can't tell by the speed of my speaking, anxious.
So we're going to be watching this, like most of you, from home. We've had a few people ask if we're going, and we wish. It's just not a thing that we could make happen this year. Hopefully this next season we'll be going to some competitions and stuff. But no, we're going to be at home watching this on Peacock and the ISU feeds and all that stuff, and just hoping for great competitions that everybody can be proud of and that expect to have a lot of fascinating things to talk about once it's all said and done. With all of that in mind, as we wrap up, the usual reminder that everything Scoreography is available at scoreography.show, the primary hub for the show, and the community of commentary from all of you listeners is at the YouTube channel and the posts for the individual episodes. So if you want to join the conversation, that's a great place to hop into the comments. Give us your predictions, what you think is coming up, who you think the dark horse candidates for the podiums are. We'd love to hear all of that stuff. If you're new to joining us or you're just discovering us because it's Worlds and it's drawing in all of the fandoms, make sure to hit subscribe, whether it's on YouTube or any of the podcast platforms you might be listening, and stick with us because we got a lot of stuff coming up in the off season too, that even when this big season finishes up, there's still a lot to talk about and a lot of fun things to do in the world of skating. So I'm looking forward to all that stuff. All of the social links to follow us in the various places is in the episode description or there on the website. So if you want to join us in those places, that'd be great. But when we next talk to you, we will be talking about the results from World Championships. So, so hang on to your butts because it's about to get wild. So until after Worlds, for Scoreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.